he's big, and he's mine. Hello interwebs, and oh my god, Star Trek Discovery is finally back, and I am so excited. Yeah, it has been 18 months since that cliffhanger ending of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. I mean, back when I was doing reviews of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, my videos looked like this. Yeah, think about that. That was a thing. But oh my gosh, I am just so excited. As much as I have loved Lower Decks, and believe me, I loved Lower Decks, but I am honestly just so pumped and excited. I did not realize until the episode started how much I missed my Sonequa Martin Green. I missed my Michael Burnham. She is just so wonderful, and I adore her. Screw you, Fandom Menace. She is wonderful, and I love her with all of my heart. Yes, so we are going to dive into the Season 3 premiere of Star Trek Discovery, That Hope Is You, Part 1. What did I think of it? Did I love it? Did I hate it? Was I mixed on it? We're gonna find out here, so I'm gonna jump into my spoiler-free thoughts, which is gonna be kind of hard because there's so many spoilers in this episode, but I'll give some of my spoiler-free sort of general thoughts about the episode, and then we're gonna go full bore, jumping into those spoilers, because it is, oh my gosh, is it exciting and a lot of fun, which might be kind of spoiling my review overall, but yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. So yes, general thoughts of this episode. It was just absolutely so exciting. This episode had a lot of heavy lifting to do because basically we were getting a kind of a soft reboot here with this new season of Star Trek Discovery, with the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 2 basically shooting forward our characters 1,000 years into the future. And I think that the writers of Discovery really did something incredibly smart with this episode, which is just focus in on Sonequa Martin Green. Yes, this episode is really just all about giving us Sonequa Martin Green and kind of using her, like, coming into this world as an impetus to just learning more about the state of things now that we're 1,000 years into the future. But this episode, while it does have a ton of exposition, manages to really tell a fun, not necessarily unique kind of story. I've seen this type of story before, again, without spoiling too much, but it was very fun, very well done. It was a lot of, like, jokes and over-the-top, like, shootouts and things like that, but also a good way to sort of get us to understand and learn a little bit more about what the world of Star Trek and the Federation is in this timeline at this point in the future of the galaxy, I should say. The other thing I will say too, we do get to meet our other new main character of this episode, Book, played by David Ajala, I believe is how his name is pronounced. I hope I don't screw it up. If I did, apologies to the actor. But I really love his introduction into this show as well. He has fantastic chemistry with Sonequa Martin Green in this episode. They bounce off of each other really well. It's a good push and pull. You can definitely tell they're gonna be boning at some point this season. The entire time I was sitting here with my roommate, I'm just watching them like, oh, they're gonna bone at some point in the next few episodes. It's just a thing. They have too much chemistry together, and they're both just beautiful people. So that's happening at some point, but they do have fantastic chemistry together. I did like Book. He was, again, without spoiling too much before I get into the spoiler section, I did like that he kind of had a chip on his shoulder, but ultimately seemed like a really intriguing guy who I'm very excited to get to know and join the cast of the show. He seems like he'll be a perfect fit. The other thing, too, I'll say about this episode before I dive into spoilers is I really want to focus in on Sonequa Martin Green here. Sonequa Martin Green has always been a powerhouse performer. Say what you want about Michael Burnham and how Michael Burnham has been written, Sonequa Martin Green always gives her all, and that is doubly so, and that is saying something, but it is doubly so in this episode. Sonequa Martin Green acts her butt off. I know Patrick Stewart was, like, angling for his Emmy for Star Trek Picard Season 1. We need to start a campaign already for Sonequa Martin Green to get her Emmy for Star Trek Discovery Season 3, because if just on this episode alone, she goes through so much. You get to see everything through her acting, and she just does a fantastic job. Yes, there's a lot of, like, heightened, over-the-top moments, but it fits what this character is going through, and there are also some small, subtle moments that I really loved how Sonequa Martin Green portrayed them. So, fantastic props to Sonequa Martin Green. So, yes, just overall, I think this was a really fun episode. It gave us a fun adventure story that, you know, didn't, like, break my brain in terms of the stuff going on, but it was a great way to set us up and give us some exposition of the status of the Federation and the Star Trek universe right now. And we had some fantastic performances from Sonequa Martin Green and David Ajala, who just give their all and have fantastic chemistry together. So what a phenomenal opening episode. And if you haven't watched it yet, please go out and watch it, because we are about to dive into spoilers, and I am so excited to finally talk about this. All right, as I did for my Star Trek Picard reviews, for my spoilers section, I am going to try and go through the plot beat by beat, scene by scene. I'm going to try and do it a little bit quicker so my videos aren't like 40 minutes long. This episode might be a little bit longer because it is the premiere and there's so much heavy lifting that this episode has to do in terms of explaining where we're at with this soft reboot of Discovery. But going forward, I'm going to try and do them a little bit quicker and sort of talk about the beats of the story, but also sort of give a little bit of a plot by plot run through of the episodes. So first thing that we see is we see a cool little montage with this strange, mysterious guy sort of waking up, having repeating days, but we also get a look at some of the technology at this point, this far into the future. We get to see a hologram bird clock, which I want that so bad. I really would love a hologram bird clock just to wake up to every single day. But we also get to see this cool technology that sort of rises and reforms out of like the ground, and it's just a cool aesthetic for the technology of this era. I really liked what they went with there. And of course, it's just a cool little montage, and we see this guy sort of sitting down at a desk and waiting for signals that will come back around by the end of the episode. But we don't get much explanation here. But a cool visual treat and a good way to set us up for where we're at in the timeline. But then we open up on the scene that we got to see at, I believe, New York City Comic-Con a few weeks ago, where Michael Burnham bursts out of the sky and hits Book's ship and causes Book, who is flying and trying to run away from another, basically the orc from Lord of the Rings is trying to chase down Book. The guy who's like, "Meat's back on the menu, boys," is the orc trying to hunt down Book. But Michael Burnham hits Book's ship and they both crash land on the planet that they're both near. You know, it's a fairly standard scene, just crash landing stuff. But when we finally get on the planet and Michael Burnham gets out of the suit, I adore, this is going back to what I was talking about with Sonequa Martin Green's acting in this episode. She gives such a brilliant performance throughout this 5 to 10 minute scene where she's checking her equipment, she's going through everything, she's checking to see if there are life signs, and she learns that there are multiple life signs on the planet that she's on. And we know, because her whole mission was to save everybody from Control, save all life in the galaxy from Control, that the very fact that there are multiple life signs is so joyous. And Sonequa Martin Green gives that fantastic scream from the trailer of joy at that moment. It was just absolutely, it still made me smile, even though I had already seen that moment. But then immediately she starts looking for signals from Discovery and finds that it's not there. And then she's all alone. And again, we see the complete inverse of that. We see the despair on Michael Burnham's face. Again, Sonequa Martin Green just selling that despair so well. Again, going from the depths of joy to the depths of despair in just a few moments. Fantastic acting, and it all feels believable. Even though it is a very heightened emotions, you would be going through heightened emotions at this time. And I like that she grounds herself eventually by just taking out her Starfleet stuff, her survival kit, and re-saying her name, her serial number to herself, and sort of emphasizing a theme that will go throughout the episode of just this belief in Starfleet as a form of identity and a belief in yourself through Starfleet ideals. And I like that that sort of subtly begins here. But then she also sends her angel suit to go up and close the portal and explode it so that Control cannot follow them through, which doesn't make sense, but that's a problem with season 2 of Discovery. But anyway, she goes. I like that there's a little nod that she sends the signal to Spock back that we saw at the end of season 2. So she does that really briefly, and then she sends the angel suit to explode so that no one can come through the time portal after that fact. So great little moment from Sonequa Martin Green there. Great acting, just great scene there. And then she goes off to find Book's ship, who she had seen crash land earlier. And when she gets to the ship basically cloaks itself in this sort of cloaking field, and Book attacks her from behind. And this is where we get to see the start of that great chemistry. They have this wonderful back and forth together. I really love that Book is kind of pushing against her. He's like, I don't want to know you. I don't trust you. I don't want to know anything about you. They have a really sort of balls to the wall fight. I like that Michael Burnham sort of gives back as hard as she gets from Book. I adore it. I also like references to Book's sort of tech. He talks about wormhole technology and sort of blames her. We get sort of these allusions to different technologies, but not really a lot of references to warp, which I really kind of enjoyed, and sort of subtle hints of the world building going on here through his conversation with her. But I also really loved at the end of the fight that Michael Burnham basically says, look, I'm all by myself here now, and the only way I'm going to get through this is through trusting someone. So you may not want it, but I need to trust somebody, and that trust is you. again, that subtle theme of belief in the goodness and ideals of others that carries throughout this whole episode. And so I like that sort of being reinforced here over and over and over again in different ways, that she's trusting others. It's about trusting yourself. It's about trusting the greater values of the Federation. Just that theme just comes out, that sort of belief, that true believers idea just comes out in so many different ways throughout the episode. Just wonderful theming throughout the episode and drawing it out of characters and the situation at hand rather than just sort of beating you with the theme over the head. So that was a very Trek moment when she said, I needed to trust somebody. Then Book and Burnham go inside Book's ship. Again, we get some cool look at the technology in here, but we also get to meet Grunge, who is the hugest, most adorable cat. I also love that his name is, I said Grunge, Grudge, not Grunge. That's a completely different type of cat, but I love that he named him, Book named the cat Grudge because he's big and he's mine. I thought that was cute and adorable. Grudge is now my favorite character on Star Trek Discovery. Come at me. I adore her. Him, it, I don't know the cat's pronouns. I think it was a her. So if I misgendered the cat, apologies. I'm a bad trans person. So basically they decide while on Book's ship that they're going to go to the mercantile area on the planet in order to sell some of Michael Burnham's antiques, her old tricorder, her old phaser that she has from 1,000 years ago, and trying to sell them to get some money. I like that. That's sort of a clever use of what Michael Burnham has on hand to try and have something unique to sell in order to get what she needs, in order to try and find a comm station in order to contact Discovery. So I like that we have our sort of setup of what needs to happen and using the tools at hand to get to that. But we also get hints here and earlier in the episode that Book has some sort of cargo that belongs to itself. And I like that that sort of keeps getting hinted at, and that we get to see like Michael Burnham kind of figuring out a little bit about the cargo, that it's temperature sensitive, and it's something that he wants to keep hidden. And I like that she sort of analyzes out that something's going on with his cargo without him saying anything, just showing how smart Michael Burnham is, but actually showing it to us rather than telling it to us. So he's able to to figure it out as we go. But as they walk and are heading to the mercantile area, we get some exposition here about the fact that the Federation is gone and about the burn. About 100 years ago, all dilithium, or a lot of the dilithium, basically exploded with no explanation, which shut down all warp travel throughout basically what we think the entire galaxy, and that sort of led to the destruction of the Federation. And I love seeing Michael Burnham's, I don't love seeing it, but it read so well, like Michael Burnham's hurt and just devastation at the loss of the Federation. I think if we lived in Star Trek Future, we would be I mean, I was kind of devastated just hearing about it, even though I kind of knew because of all the trailers and stuff. It was sad to hear that this thing that people believed in had gone away, that this ideal that we all put our hopes and dreams into had disappeared. But I liked that Book sort of talked about that there are still people out there, people that wear the badge and things, that are true believers. Again, that theming here that I really like going throughout. And Michael Burnham standing for that is like, no, the Federation is an ideal. And I like that moment when he turns away, she gives herself a moment of feeling the pain, but then she collects herself. And they keep going. So good little exposition scene that's rooted in showing us the emotional weight of that moment for Michael Burnham's character, and as many of us as Trek fans would feel. The other thing, too, I will say about the burn while we're talking about it here is there's some implication, or at least in the trailers at the end of the episode, sort of going into the future, but there's some implication that the burn was not a natural disaster. That Michael Burnham, again, this is sort of hinted at in the trailers more than in this episode, but I at least kind of want to talk about it, that there's some mystery behind what caused the burn. No one really knows what happened with the burn. And I know a lot of people were theorizing before this season came out that the burn was something to do with the Omega particle from Star Trek Voyager, or maybe that Star Trek The Next Generation episode where we learned that, if the Federation kept warping too much, it would just destabilize subspace and cause all things to break down. But that mystery element of we don't know why all of it suddenly exploded all at once across the galaxy implies that there's some sort of nefarious intention behind it, that it wasn't just a natural disaster, but something intentionally caused this to happen. Now, I don't really have enough to hook into to give me any clues as to why that would be the case or who would have caused that. I could speculate wildly and say it was like the Dominion or the Borg or whatever, but I really don't have enough clues within the show right now to really speculate, but clearly there was some sort of intent behind this. And so I'm very curious to see, once we start getting more clues to who this possibly could be, to start getting a little bit more theorizing into what the burn actually was caused by. But I like that we know what the burn is right up here, that it was just dilithium exploding. The other thing with the burn that I do want to call out and talk about, while this won't come up until probably next episode when we get to see the rest of the Discovery crew and what's going on with them, I do like that the burn basically justifies the spore drive drive on Discovery. Now, obviously, ships can't go to warp, they can't get around, and the spore drive is now going to be the only way that people can get around throughout the Federation very quickly. So it actually makes the Discovery, which is an old ancient ship, one of the most important ships in Star Trek because it's able to jump around. But I also really like the fact that the writers just didn't dismiss this idea of the spore drive. It would have been very easy, especially when they're already doing a soft reboot, to just say, hey, we're done with the spore drive stuff. You know, it was ridiculous, spore highway, whatever. We're getting rid of the prequel stuff. But I like that they're at least taking that element of Discovery, this spore drive, and justifying it narratively within the story and actually doing something with it and actually pushing forward. That's actually something that Star Trek has historically not always done. I mean, you look at Star Trek Voyager and how quickly they dismissed the Maquis on the ship element of that show, and you look at The Next Generation and how quickly they dismissed like the generation ship element of that show, that there was families on board the Galaxy class and that it could split in two and protect things. That was also fairly summarily dismissed. So credit to the Discovery writers, and we'll see how they utilize it throughout the season, but credit to the Discovery writers to, even in season 3, working to justify their narrative choices from earlier, not just dismissing them when it would have been very easy to do so. So again, we'll talk a little bit about that more as the season progresses and how they eventually justify it, but I do like that they're finding a way to use it instead of just saying like, yeah, we know you guys didn't like the spore drive, we'll just sort of ignore it. So I do like that here. Then we finally get to the mercantile area, which looks like a place that Quark would be thriving in. It's definitely a Ferengi haven, but I like that it's, again, rejiggering of some alien races. This mercantile area is run by the Orions and the Andorians, and Michael Burnham calls it out, so he's sort of weirded out by that. But I like the fact that, the Orions make sense to sort of be running this mercantile area, but I like that Andorians are also part of it too, because they did have that sort of militaristic sort of aspect to their culture, and one would think if the Federation's gone, a lot of Andorians would probably join up with the Orions to sort of be the muscle to their sort of economic weight, and sort of the rejiggering of the alliances between alien races here. I also don't know if all Andorians, like the Andorian as a government or a species, are all part of the Orion Syndicate or whatever this is now, but I like that sort of reconfiguring of alien races here. We get some explanation of how this courier system works. Basically, couriers are sent out, they're paid in dilithium, but only for the job that they're doing. Book is one of those couriers, and they come in and get a job and then get dilithium in order to go on their next job. But here we get Book basically betrays Burnham, tricks her into sneaking into the vault, and steals her antiques in order to try and sell them for himself. And I like, again, that Book is not a fully trustworthy guy, and that it's sort of like subtly hinting at like maybe Burnham's trust is naive, that true believer bit that again gets reinforced later. It's like, no, she did believe in the right person, but I like that it's sort of tested here. Again, sort of that like, is she naive? Is she wrong to believe in the Federation and the values of Starfleet? Is that like subtle on a subtle personal level, but on a larger moralistic level? Again, I like that theming playing out on a personal level and a larger level here. Just wonderfully done character work throughout this episode. Then we get an interrogation scene where Michael Burnham is interrogated by basically kind of an inept Andorian and an Orion. Very fun. I called out so many scenes. They basically give her a truth serum. There's so many great lines here. This is one of the things I like about this episode. While it could have been easily fallen into despair, like the Federation's gone, Starfleet's gone, oh, everything's dark and awful in the future, there's a lot of joy and fun. Like, this episode is probably one of the most fun episodes of Discovery, which is saying something because this is the episode where the Federation is gone. So to have this episode be one of the most fun episodes of Discovery is just, I like that there's still joy and happiness to be found even amongst the darkness that this season is going to be tackling head on. I really, really enjoy that. But there's just so many great lines. I love her saying, I have a friend with red hair, you cannot give her some. Obviously referring to Tilly, and you cannot give Tilly this truth serum. She talks about, I'm overcompensating. Oh, I saved all of the things. You should really get your couriers together if they're like hitting 1,000-year-old women out of the sky. Just some really fun acting. Again, fun acting by Sonequa Martin Green. She's clearly having a lot of fun in the part, just being kind of drugged out and over the top of her, over her head and everything. The editing was a lot of fun here too. I like the jump cuts. In that section, it really showed her being drugged out. Just a fun little section that I just adored so many of the lines from. Book obviously can't sell the antiques because he's a terrible courier apparently. But then he gets confronted by Michael Burnham and the Andorians and Orions. But I like, again, it shows their chemistry that Michael Burnham and Book work together. They like wink and they basically fight back against the Orions and the Andorians. and they steal some personal teleporters that were set up earlier in the episode, and also some dilithium as well. But I like that this whole section is them just sort of like running around, kind of drugged out. Michael Burnham's drugged out, and just Sonequa Martin Green just gives the best faces. Like when Book like blows up one of the guys, she goes like, "Whoa!" Sonequa Martin Green is just having so much fun playing the sort of like drugged out Burnham here. It was truly a joy to behold. I also love the force push device that they use to try and get out of this. It's like a non-lethal thing. The one thing I will say about this whole like fun like transporter to new areas section here is it was a bit murdery for me. I can see some other people being much more upset about that, being like, oh, they're murdering everybody. This isn't very Starfleet, not very Star Trek with everyone getting murdered. I don't necessarily have a problem with it that much. I wish there was a little bit less murder, or like it was called out, like maybe Michael Burnham's like, whoa, these things don't have a stun setting. Or something like that. Just a little bit of a thing to acknowledge the fact that, like, yes, she is murdering people, and I understand that she would do that in this situation because she really doesn't have a choice because of the weapons on hand. But I would just have liked a little bit of a call out to them being more murdery, non-lethal weapons. But it's not a big deal for me. Bit of a nitpick, but just something I wanted to call out. Then we get some teleporter shenanigans, which I thought was a lot of fun. Again, it just shows a lot of the chemistry between Book and Michael Burnham. It was a fun little sequence. Again, I've seen this sort of teleporter-y stuff done before, but I also have to say the landscape shots, and I think they shot in Iceland for this episode, beautiful. They did some beautiful landscape work throughout this entire episode, and it really, really shows. And so I liked them jumping to different areas, which is just a fun little like action beat sequence. And again, just showed the chemistry between the two of them. And Book like shoving her off the cliff in order to teleport into water, which makes it harder for them to track. Really great and smart idea, and just a cool little way for them to justify how they get away in that sequence when they can teleport literally anywhere. So a lot of fun with that. Then we get them resting finally on this island. Book takes off his shirt, which is really all I could focus on throughout this sequence. Again, me being like, they're totally gonna bone at some point this season. What would it be? Burn Book? The Burn Book? Is that their ship name? Burn Book? Book Burn? Ham Book? Bookham? Michael Bookham? Something like that. I'm terrible at ship names. Don't listen to me. We also see in this scene that Book is smart himself. He works out that Michael Burnham is a time traveler. Again, I like showing that he is just as smart as Michael Burnham. Again, we're being shown that they're both intelligent and can figure things out, not told these things. I like that these characters are being well written enough in these scenes to show how intelligent Michael Burnham is through actions and her own deductions, and Book matches her as well and can deduce as well. And we get that reiteration of the True Believers theme as well, that she really believes in Starfleet and the Federation, and because she is a time traveler. We also get this hint of Book being able to talk to animals in nature. He's sort of like is an evolved human. I don't know, maybe he's another species that just looks human, but he clearly has the ability to talk to nature, and I like that it's sort of a prayer for him that we'll come back to in a few more scenes, but I really deeply enjoyed that. Eventually, then, we go back to Book's ship, and of course, the Orions and Andorians and the Mercantile people and the Orc from Lord of the Rings have figured out where they are, and they attack the ship. And then we sort of get the standard sort of stand-up bits, like, you don't really want to open up the ship. Yeah, we do, and it turns out the thing that they want to get will murder them kind of conveniently. It's a setup I've seen a lot in science fiction, but what I do like about it, the animal that comes out that they release from the ship, and I also like the Stinky joke that his pin to get into the ship is Stinky. That was a fun little human moment for Book there. But I like that the thing that comes out of the ship does eat Michael Burnham. I thought that was very fun. But also, Book uses his ability to calm down the animal to get her out. Again, reiterating and showing and paying off that he can talk to animals. And so that was just a wonderful little scene there. Again, the setup of like the, oh yeah, you don't want to get into the ship, the thing's going to kill you, whatever sort of thing, has definitely been done before. But I thought it was done effectively and showed a lot of a character for Book in that sequence, both in the small ways with the Stinky joke and the big ways with his ability to talk to animals. Then we get a really beautiful and truly Trek scene, and we learn a little bit more about who Book actually is, and we learn that his ability to talk to animals is a genetic trait of his family, that he comes from a line of poachers, but he is someone different who wants to save animals, and he's basically bringing this animal that he stole from the other courier back to his sanctuary, I believe Sanctuary 4, in order for it to thrive and live in an animal sanctuary with a bunch of different alien species. I thought that was a really beautiful thing, and something we really haven't seen in Star Trek. We haven't gotten gotten a lot of main characters who are big giant animal lovers and can talk to animals. And that's such a Trek ideal, though, that people would want to preserve nature and preserve animals in the future. I really loved that, and that he's, in his own way, a true believer, holding on to values that the Federation would hold on to. And Michael Burnham calls it out that there's no laws anymore that says you have to protect animals, but he is a true believer in protecting animals. And so I like that connection that they're able to forge here. And again, going back to that theme of being true believers in something better, in something higher than yourself. And so I like that she is able to connect with him on that level. And then he brings her to that Federation outpost that we saw at the beginning of the episode with that gentleman who was just doing his, living his best life on the Federation outpost all by himself, just going into the office and talking to nobody for 40 years or whatever it was. I did think that was a bit ridiculous when we eventually get to the Federation outpost, like an old Starfleet base, that this guy just is there for 40 years. But I do like that it goes back again to that theme of, we meet this guy. Turns out his father before him and his father's father were all Starfleet officers who, stayed at this office waiting for some commissioned officer to come and need them and actually ask for their help. And going again back to that true believer idea. And I like at the moment where he calls out, he's like, I don't know where Discovery is, and because of the temporal, dynamics, Discovery could show up at any time, either now or in 1,000 years. Who knows? We can't really tell. And we can't time travel because of the Cold Wars, or the temporal wars, which I like to call it, to the temporal Cold War that book mentions earlier. Even though it saddens me that we're past that now, so we won't get to see Crewman Daniels probably cry. But I do like the fact that he boosts her spirits, because Burnham is distraught over the fact that she's not going to find Discovery, but he gives this wonderful, beautiful scene and this beautiful, beautiful line that says, I waited 40 years. I waited for hope. And that hope, in the title, the hope is you. And I like that it wasn't this big moment, because the worry that I had when I saw a title like that was it was going to be this thing of like, oh, Michael Burnham is again the most important person in the galaxy. And that's something that always kind of bugged me. Like, I don't mind the Mary Sue arguments don't really bug me all that much about Michael Burnham. I like her as a character. The thing that does always bother me is that she's always literally the most important person ever. She literally saves the galaxy, and the Red Angel was her mother and all that jazz and all that stuff. And she was also very important in season 1 of Discovery. So I like here that this hope is a little bit subtler. It wasn't that he was hoping for Michael Burnham specifically, but he was just hoping someone would come, and someone did. He waited. He believed. He was a true believer in the Federation, the ideals of Starfleet, and someone came. And that hope was Michael Burnham. And that sort of gives her hope. And again, paying off that theme of belief, that if you believe hard enough, even when it seems like all hope is lost, you get repaid at the most surprising moment. We saw it in subtle ways with Michael Burnham's belief in Book paying off, Book being a true believer in the animals, this Federation guy who's been hanging out at the station for far too many years. God, props to that dude. But at least he had his hologram bird. But he also waited, and his hope paid off. And so I like that. Again, I know a lot of people are probably going to be complaining, it's like, oh yes, Discovery was always so dark. It was such a dark show, and even now we're going into season 3, and the Federation's literally gone at this point. I can see that argument, but there is such an affirmation of the beliefs of the Federation here, and there's also so much joy and exuberance and hope. Again, that word hope throughout this episode, that I never felt how dark it could have been. This could have been a very grim, dark, nihilistic piece. But it made me smile. It gave me hope. It brought me to tears, welling up with emotion for my belief in Starfleet and the Federation here. And so I like that, yes, the Federation's gone, but it's 1,000 years in the future, people. Like, there are still 800 years of stories that you can tell, barring the 24th century. There's still 800 years of stories you can tell with the Federation of that era. And, if Discovery is able to bring the Federation back, there's still thousands of more stories you can tell after this point. And so I really like that this season starts off this way of like, yes, things are dark, but we are bringing the light. And that's really what Discovery has always been about. We're going to start in a dark place, but we're going to get to that bright, hopeful future. And I really like that. It seems like with this episode, they are doing it in a way that still has that aspect of it, of the going from the dark to the light and reigniting hope, but doing it in a way that feels much more joyous and fun and instilling that belief in you from the beginning than something like, say, Discovery Season 1 did. I honestly think a lot of the themes of this season will kind of similarly match the themes of Discovery Season 1, but I like that they've kind of married it with the tone of Season 2. So this season really just feels like they've learned the lessons of Season 1 and Season 2 and are married the best of both worlds from those two seasons into this storyline and are doing it in such a fun, intelligent way. I'm very excited to see this show going forward. So wrapping up my thoughts, I kind of hit on a lot of them there, but if you hadn't been able to tell, I really think that this was a very strong start of the season. There's a good mystery set up. There's a good story. I love the themes of this. I think it marries a lot of the, it fixes a lot of the thematic and storytelling problems of previous seasons of Discovery. It may go off the rails in the next few episodes. That sort of was a problem with Season 2, that it started strong and kind of went off the rails. But I think this starting point in terms of the story for the season was great. But even in this episode itself, such a wonderful performance from Sonequa Martin Green. Wonderful chemistry with the new characters. I really liked the new characters. I didn't even talk too much about how it looked, but as always, Discovery looks visually brilliant and fantastic. Just wonderful direction here. And there actually wasn't a lot of like the crazy camera movements that always kind of made me kind of nauseous from previous seasons as well. So good job on that. Yeah, just all around, I think, well written, well characterized episode in and of itself, but also set us up for some really brilliant stories that I think touch upon what Discovery's always tried to say, but maybe in a way that is more refined than they've done in previous seasons. So that's everything that I had to say about this episode. I know I've ranted for a very long time, but I'm so very, very excited. I can't tell you how so excited I am to finally have Discovery back in my life. I'm just so excited for the rest of this season, people. So we're going to see the crew of Discovery next episode, and for those of you who may not know, this is going to be my last review in this space. Yes, this weekend I am moving officially to Seattle, which I am so excited for. I'm so pumped for, and I wouldn't have been able to make that move without all of you out there. So thank you to all of you. I'm very excited to go off on my new adventure, just like Star Trek Discovery is starting off on its own adventure. So thank you to everybody. Just all the usual stuff. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to help me out with my move financially. Patreon is really, really helpful, especially this month with my move coming up this weekend. What else? I do some podcasts. You can check those out. But beyond all of that, subscribing, commenting, helping me out on Patreon. I just hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. And I will see you next week from Seattle. A huge thank you to my amazing patrons who make this channel happen, and an extra special thank you to Miranda Janelle, Ashley Allen Bokikio, Eli Berg-Moss, Ashlyn Solstice, Christina Dalliance, Greg Gillum, Stephen Kleinard, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Wellington Marcus, Wayne Twitchell, Buttoneer, Ish the Mad, Munir Amlani, John Steele, Gavin Robinson, William Stewart, Michael Beam, Spock TOS, BBD, Nathan Olson, The Sir Spence, Zach Cody, Bree Beecher, Maeve, Chloe Dollar, Subraxis, Wen Dizzle Bizzle, Tanya Trummer, Gretchen Badger, Dante St. James, Polly Mina, Piston Twisted Garage, Mark the Edge, and Din. I could not do this without all of you, so thank you so much, especially this month.